it's quite difficult going at the end of a packed agenda like this because most of the things have already been said. So I'm going to skate over some bits of it, I think, or put a slightly different spin on it. We've already heard forced labour is everywhere. Not one of us, whatever our business, can say we are risk-free. But I think what we have learned is the challenge is how do you actually manage your unknowns? Because we don't know very often. We know it's there, we don't know where it is. So where do we go looking? And that's part of what I want to sort of try and sort of talk a little bit about this afternoon. If we go way, way back, one of the first times we started to hear about this was back in the 90s with Nike. I think it was World Cup footballs, I seem to remember, about 96 or something. But at that point, The Guardian and Panorama and the likes of those sorts of organisations were sort of going and probing, looking, finding, and trying to ask people to do these things, to sort of find out what was going on. There's a lot of denial, and it took Nike quite a while to get their heads around this and move out of that phase of denial. And they moved their strapline from just do it, which is what everybody knows them for, to just fix it. And they came up with 3 core principles that they started to work through. And they're actually pretty much all words we've been hearing about this afternoon. Traceability, accountability, and then collaboration and innovation. It's actually 4 words, isn't it? But collaboration and innovation sort of go together a bit. So they've worked through all of those, and it culminated last year where they were voted one of the most sustainable apparel brands in America. So they've been on a real journey. And I just want to talk through some of those key themes that they were focusing on. Traceability. Various speakers have said in construction, we've got a very, very complex supply chain. It is mammoth. Somebody said 7 tiers. I suspect there are some products where it's even more than that. It's probably significantly more than that. But then equally, there are some supply chains that are really, really easy. Very short. You know exactly where things are coming from. So how do you deal with all of that? How do we know what we need to be doing and where we need to be looking? And the first challenge, and this is where I think as a construction industry, we have got so many unknown unknowns. Because virtually nobody, unless you've got a really simple supply chain, have actually mapped what their suppliers are. They might know where all their tier 1s are. Do you actually know where all your tier 2s are? I bet you don't. Let alone getting down into the even lower tiers, tier 7, 8 or whatever. So how do we go about doing that? How do we actually get our heads around that? And I think that's where software can start to play a role, and I'll come on to that shortly. But the key thing, as somebody was saying, is about risk. We want to understand where the risks are and what our major risks are. You can't start to do that until you've mapped the supply chain, because that's one of the key facets of understanding that. Lots of people say to me, well, surely, Ian, it's about top 10 by spend, top 10 by volume. Is it? Is that really where the big human rights risks are, forced labour risks might be? One of the earlier speakers talked about mica that came out as an issue recently. Well, if you look in the car manufacturing world, it's in pearlescent paint. Well, that's not actually going to be one of the top 10 by spend or top 10 by volume categories, is it? So how are you ever going to find where those sorts of high risks are? So I think we have to recalibrate how we identify risk, and that means data, that means knowing where people are coming from, understanding the different issues. And from my perspective, in Responsible Source Solutions, we talk about ethical risk. And ethics, to me, isn't just forced labour, isn't just modern slavery. It's actually much broader than that. There's a whole range of environmental issues, water footprinting, carbon and climate change, biodiversity, habitat loss. There are so many different risks that all come down to ethics. And it was, sorry, I've forgotten your name, the gentleman from CIOB that talked about professional ethics. And actually, as a construction industry with so many professionals in it, with our own professional institutions' code of conduct, we have a duty to think about all of these things. So ethics covers all of this. So how do you put all of that into the mix? moving just back to human rights and forced labour and things, because that's where we are focused. One of the things that people can sort of say is, well, accountability. Well, I go with the legislation. I go with the codes of practice. Well, as somebody else has just sort of said during the afternoon, that's the starting point. Accountability is really you as a business, maybe you as an individual, as a professional. You can't just hide behind the legislation and the codes of practice. They're starting points. So we have to go beyond that and take our own responsibility. And that means knowing our own risks, doing your own risk assessments, the due diligence, understanding your supply chains. And lots of people start with that through auditing. Audits are great. They give you data. They certainly reduce the unknown unknowns in your supply chain, but they're only snapshots. They're not real time. How do you actually know where your products are coming from? And there's lots of stories of auditors being taken to wonderful factories in the Far East where their products are made from, only to find out actually, no, they're not made there. That was a factory that was built, painted nicely for the auditor. The products are never coming from that factory at all. It's all a manufactured theatrical world. So how do you know your audits are right? And that's where software starts to come in. And some of these solutions are here today, actually starting to do real-time tracking. And we're working with a software supplier who are a leading supplier into the garment industry, who have real-time tracking of purchase orders throughout the supply chain. The system starts with actually having your specification loaded into the system, so you know who your approved suppliers are. You know where they're coming from. Those suppliers have got data in that system around the certifications they've got, the standards they're working to. So you've got the data behind those approved suppliers. And because this is monitoring sales orders, if somebody suddenly doesn't order from an approved supplier further down the supply chain, a red flag comes up because the order volumes don't look right. They're not right. The maths doesn't add up. So you can start to see where things are coming from. If you don't know your supply chain, you can use this as an initial mapping tool to actually start to see where things are coming from. So we start to get more real-time transparency of what's actually going on. And that will start to give you the focus about where your risks might be. I've got something coming from Bangladesh, Taiwan, wherever. Oh, let me go and have a look. Let me go and ask some more questions. Let me go and do a bit of probing in that area, because there's some flags that are coming up there. And I think one of the real interesting things about this as well, is we're in danger of going into a silo, and another silo actually, of just talking about forced labour. One of the things that I quickly realised as I was talking to the software suppliers about this is actually it's all about data, and this thing provides data. Once you've got your approved suppliers and they put all their information on there, you can get lots of other information from them as well. And one of the big challenges we have in construction is O&M manuals, actually getting from the suppliers and the manufacturers safety data sheets, operating manuals, and the like. And somebody in the industry, in every project, has this wonderful job at the end of pulling this manual together of all the things that are in the project. Well, guess what? In the ideal world, once this is fully implemented, that data is going to be there. Because as a condition of the order and an approved supplier being on the system, all that data is going to be in the system. No longer will you get into this having to chase people at the end of the project, retrospectively trying to pull all this data together. So we have an opportunity to not just look at forced labour, we've got other opportunities that we can solve here as well. And then, so we can do that today. That software's there, it's operating. Many of the garment manufacturers are using it. We can use it in construction as well. But then that's only so far. I was actually at a conference just last week, and it was all about innovation and technology, and how in construction we're real laggards at not using technology. And I was sat there thinking, why am I here, actually? Why have I come to this conference? And then as I got into it, I started thinking, actually, you know what? They started talking about RFID chips. Well, what happens if we actually chip all of our products? Not only would you know through a real-time sales order system who was supplying it, you would know physically where in the world this thing was the minute after it was manufactured. You would see exactly whose hands it was going through. Where was it going? So that's just one simple one. I've got a barcode up there. That's a bit yesterday, really, in terms of technology. But lots of the car manufacturers, every component is barcoded. So you can scan it at the end of its life, know what's in it. Oh, there's another solution that we've got. Because if we've got this chip in this thing, you can scan it once it's in the building, know what's in it, know what material's in it. It's from a safety perspective, a demolition perspective. Oh, another silo broken. And then the other thing that's floating around, people might have heard of blockchain. Bitcoin is the key thing that's using it at the moment. This is where it's come from, this alternative currency. It's a decentralized database. So another way of actually getting data real time in an accurate, encrypted way. So what role can that play in our complex supply chain? So there's some thoughts to leave you with.
That's it.